I want to give you a couple of technical points for our webinar today. We're going to record and post our webinar on our site in the resource section at Pointed.com, so please visit us, and you can view any of our webinars on demand. We'll be sending out a link to this webinar also afterwards, so if you can't make the whole webinar today or you miss part of it, you can enjoy it at your leisure. Also, I want to let you know that we'll be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so feel free to enter your questions along the way, and then we'll be answering them at the end. And I want to let everyone else know that this is an introductory level webinar on social media, so we'll be giving a little more definition than and on social marketing terms. So thank you for your patience if you're an expert, and we do plan to offer an advanced version later in the near future. Okay, so Maria, I'm going to go over some promotional stuff or Pointed real quickly. If you
Sure.
can, there we go, move the slide. Pointed started in 2002. We're Seattle's largest independent search marketing firm, and we have about 12 members, 40 clients, and over 40 years of experience in search engine marketing, servicing clients across all verticals and big and small. In 2008, we managed over 30 million in pay-per-click media. I'm going to show you some of the typical logos. These are some of our clients right now, and that's about it for the promotion. Let's get right to it now. I'd like to introduce our speakers today, Maria Nikishina, along with Corey Banks, who are our in-house social media and SEO experts. Maria, it's all yours.
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. It's good to have you here. We'd like to get started by defining what social media is. And the irony of defining that is that the only medium we can use to define it is actually social media. The screenshot that you see on here comes from Wikipedia. And of course, the definition is not final, and there are many definitions available out there. This is the one that we'd like to go by. In short, social media can be defined as internet and mobile-based tools for sharing and discussing information among human beings. And even in more simple terms, basically social media is all that's available out there for people to have a conversation online. Whether you're a LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter user, you know what I'm talking about. Basically, it's a way for you to either talk to anybody who is willing to listen or to talk to somebody in particular. Moving on from here, we'd like to share some examples of the businesses that we think get social media and do it right. And for this presentation, we'll focus on the main three networks. We'll focus on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Like John said, this is an introductory level webinar, so please keep that in mind. We do plan to have an advanced session later on. We will go in depth on some other networks that are more niche and less common than these three. So as a business or as an entrepreneur, how can you leverage these networks? Of course, social media means that you have to be social. Without being social, you stand no chance. People are not there to do business. They're there to talk. So what you can do is you can share the conversation and share the unique content that you've got. And unique content might mean anything. It may be your PowerPoint slides, it may be a promotional video, or it may be just an in-house video of your staff. Do put that on there because people do want to see it. If you do a good job sharing, you will build communities. And when you have built a community, there's three big points that your business can benefit from. Point number one is it allows you to communicate and engage with both your current customers and your prospects. Point number two, it'll allow you to build credibility and trust for your brand. Very important for some big guys out there. They're very much so because they have a hard time building that with other mediums. And lastly, you'll be able to educate and share. Very important for those businesses that deal with consumers or produce consumer products because it gives them an opportunity to educate their customer base. It gives them a testing ground if they're thinking about a new product. It gives them room for feedback. All very important. We'd like to get started with the first network. Our first network is Twitter. Very likely that all of you have heard about Twitter. chances are some of you may be using it. Corey Banks, a colleague of mine, will be going over the Twitter with you. He'll cover some of the basic Twitter terms. There are quite some that are very oddly sounding if you're not familiar with it. He'll also share some examples and tips for how you can leverage Twitter, whether you're on Twitter already or whether you're planning to be on there later. Corey?
Great. Thanks, Maria. And thanks to everyone here who's listening to the webinar today. We're going to start talking about Twitter. As you can see, we're looking at Twitter's actual Twitter profile. No better place to start or use an example than what Twitter already does. Twitter got started in 2006, kind of a small operation, and grew exponentially in 2007 when they had the big coming out party at South by Southwest in Austin. They really built their core user base there, and they really sold a lot of people on the concept. And then, of course, last year, I'm sure you all remember when Oprah suddenly discovered Twitter, and it became a huge buzzword. So what is Twitter? Twitter is a microblogging platform, and that just means that you're putting up content that's limited in size. All of the Twitter posts, or tweets as they're called on the service, are limited to 140 characters, and this provides some unique challenges for the content that you can share with people, links, structure, just information, but it also can be very limiting or very freeing in the way that you have your limits. So let's talk about Twitter's audience a little bit. They have a very targeted audience. It's very consumer-focused. You're talking about an older demographic, people who are alpha consumers, people who are willing to spend money, people who are in the know, because Twitter as a communication service keeps people in the loop about what's going on day to day. It has its own language. You're going to hear us drop some really silly, ridiculous-sounding terms when we're talking about Twitter. A Twitter post is a tweet, kind of ridiculous-sounding, but there it is. So you'll often see people talking about tweeting information out and sharing it with their friends. Followers are essentially the audience for your Twitter profile. You want to have as many unique, interesting, and engaged followers as possible. As you can see here, Twitter has 2.4 million. That's a sizable number. I start smaller than that, but we'll talk about how you can add followers and the value of followers later on. As a communication service, you'll see that a lot of people will reply to one another on the service. These are typically called @replies. These are messages that start with the @ symbol and include someone's username. And they're great ways of tracking who's talking to you and about you, who's mentioning you on the service. You're also going to hear us talk about retweets, where people will take the content that you post on your Twitter feed and use it as their own. They repurpose it as content of their own while giving you attribution. This is a fantastic way of finding out how your message is pollinating throughout the service. People might discover you because their friends talked about you and retweeted a post that you have. So we're going to look at some examples of other Twitter accounts now, but before we get started on that, I want to highlight the idea that Twitter is very open-ended. There's a lot of different ways you can use Twitter. Nobody really knows the full potential of the service or the best way to get their grasp on it. We're going to show you 3 different examples that have worked very well for the companies that are using Twitter as a service. And hopefully that'll get your head rolling and get you thinking about what you can do for Twitter in the near future.
And before we get started into the examples, I do want to share my favorite Twitter term, and that's the Twitter quitter. It's basically the person who gets on Twitter and just doesn't stick around. So if you hear people say that, this is exactly what it means. A very funny sounding term, very widely used right now. Because
It's very common.
Yeah, they say that about 80% of the Twitter accounts right now are Twitter quitters, basically. So to get started, we have our first example here.
Yeah, the first example that we're going to look at is Comcast Cares. Probably you've heard about this. Comcast has made big waves on Twitter with their customer service initiative. And this is a feed that's actually ran by one person. His name's Frank Elizon. He is the director of digital care at Twitter, and I'm sorry, at Comcast. And the way this profile got started is really pretty interesting. Frank was very new at his job. He'd been there about a month and realized that there were a lot of people online who were complaining about Comcast outages, issues with service, that sort of thing, and realized that the potential of Twitter allowed him to see people complaining about the service in real time, but also respond back and help them fix their issues. So there's a lot of really great things going on in this profile. The first thing I want to highlight is the background image that they're using on this Twitter profile, specifically the way they customize the image to include a lot more profile information than Twitter gives you access to. If you look on the left-hand side where we've circled, Frank gives some information both about what he does and about how you can reach him and Comcast if you're having issues. It's important to note that this isn't just a Comcast Twitter account. This is Frank's actual account. And so not only will you see him responding to issues that customers are having, but he'll also be talking about his day and using Twitter like a normal user. This helps to build a genuine aspect to the social media strategy that they've started here.
I think the beauty of this example is that Frank does a really great job at mixing the business and the personal. If you look on the right-hand side, you'll see that he has a lot of tweets going on. He's very attentive and he replies to people. And on the left-hand side, he lists his personal information. He has a family website. He has a blog that he writes. And it is really important to keep that balance. Many businesses struggle with that because it is a hard balance to keep. But we can't highlight it enough. It is important to do that. And this particular Twitter profile is a great example.
And actually, that's the next example we want to show on this slide, the ability that Frank has to respond to customers. Here we've circled an @reply, and he's literally having a conversation with someone on his Twitter account. This user here, AGT2690, is having issues with their service, and he's doing the best he can to respond to those issues and give feedback and hopefully resolve the issue. This is so much better than a customer having to sit on the phone waiting for the next customer service representative, getting a ticket, getting a reference number. This is personalized one-on-one service, and this is really what Twitter can be used for in the terms of customer service, is to give that example of personalized service, of one-on-one communication. Comcast Cares is the voice of Comcast online, and they've done an unbelievable job of really building a lot of trust where Comcast didn't have it before.
You know what I find very interesting about that is that oftentimes people are having internet connection and somehow they still have means to access Frank on Twitter. Even though their connection may be down, it is so ironic.
Well, that's because Twitter is not just an online service on your computer, but can also be used on your phone. It started off as an SMS or text message kind of service. So a lot of people who use Comcast never really log into their website. They send their messages directly from their phone through a text message. It's been called the SMS of the Internet because Twitter has become so ubiquitous in a lot of people's lives. One last thing I'd like to point out on this slide, if you look over on the right-hand side, you can see the following and the follower numbers for this profile. And they're almost the same. You can see that as of the time of the screenshot, they had 30,000 followers, and they were following 30,000 people back. And that just helps them build a relationship with the people who would be using their services. You're not always going to want to follow back everyone who's interested in your services, but a lot of times it's helpful. Our next slide is an e-commerce example for Twitter. This is Toys R Us. Toys R Us started using Twitter about a year ago to show different kinds of promotions that are available only to online customers much of the time. And they're targeting their audience in a specific way. The first thing I'd like to highlight on this slide is the left-hand side again, the way that they're using their background image to continue their brand presence. Twitter gives you a standard background, but you can really personalize it to make it fit in with the rest of your online presence. You can also see that they're talking about where else you can follow them. Follow Toys R Us on Facebook. Go look at videos on YouTube. Download their deals widget. They're cross-pollinating their presence on Twitter with the rest of their online presence. And this is a really simple thing to do, but a very profitable thing to do as well.
What's also important with this is that you won't be able to find a phone number on here. So what they're suggesting is that you find them through other channels online. And it is very interesting because many of the sidebars that I have seen take the same strategy. Basically, businesses want to save money for the call center and just keep it online only. Very interesting and definitely an emergent trend overall.
So if we look at some of the content that Toys R Us is putting on their site, you can see this first post here that we've circled shows their deal of the day, a Fisher-Price Shake and Go. And they've cut the price on this, and they're only offering this online. You'll notice that they have a very strange-looking URL at the end of their post, and this is Again, part of the problem with having only 140 characters for your posts, you have to use what's called a URL or link shortening service. The default one that Twitter uses is also probably the best. It's called Bitly. And not only does it let you shorten your URL and send people to your website without having to take up extra space in a tweet, it also lets you track what's happening to the tweet that this link was in and the link itself. It's fantastic for analytical tracking. You can see how many people are retweeting or repurposing the content, sharing it with their friends, or just going to the website and following the deal that you've presented on there. We're going to talk a little bit more about Bitly later on. It's useful not just for Twitter, but for all of your social media initiatives. It's a fantastic tracking service that works in real time, but we'll gush over Bitly a little bit later. One last thing I want to show about what Toys R Us is doing with their Twitter account is, again, going back to feedback. They're communicating with people who are asking questions about the deals that they're showing. In this example, EV413, it has a question about what the previous post, what that deal is used for. Can it be online or in store? And Toys R Us is clearing that up for them. It's that personal one-on-one engagement that really makes Twitter a strong candidate for B2C businesses. But what about B2B businesses? What can you do if you're not actively going after people and trying to sell them a product? Cisco Systems has their main presence here. That's what we're showing. And they're using this mostly to build brand recognition. A couple of great things to show here. If we look over in the right-hand side, you can see the profile information that Twitter allows you to include. It's not a lot. As we've seen with previous examples, Comcast and Toys R Us are using their background image to expand on this information. But it doesn't take a long time to fill out a standard Twitter profile, probably about 30 seconds or so. So when you are filling out your profile, be smart about it. Don't give just your name and your location. Think about what web page you want to link to. In this case, Cisco is linking to their blogs page. You can also see in the bio that not only are they giving you a specific example of what they're going to be doing with this feed, they're telling you who's in charge of it. So if you have a more personal question that wouldn't be relevant to just asking Cisco Systems, you can ask John Eardhart. He's the guy running this feed. Again, real-time communication is very important for Twitter. So what is Cisco using their profile for? Well, they're responding to people. In this particular case, I think they're starting a conversation with someone. It's not so much that they're responding to what other people have said, but they're starting a conversation. And that's important to keep in mind, too. You don't have to be passive about the communication that you have on Twitter. You can engage people before they even engage you and really start off from there. You'll also see here our first example of a retweet. This is what a retweet looks like. You've got the link to the white paper that they're interested in talking about, but they took this whole post from another Cisco account and decided that it would be relevant for their audience. You'll also see a funny-looking tag at the end, that pound or hash Cisco. This is a hashtag, and it works a lot like tagging on a normal blog. You can use this to keep track of different conversations that people are having. One of the first things you'll notice when you sign up for a Twitter account is their list of trending topics for the day. And these are real-time examples of what people are talking about. Make sure if you're starting a conversation and you want to include lots of people in it, that you include hashtags. And we're going to talk about some tools later on that will help you determine and keep track of the different hashtags you're going to use on the service.
Another interesting thing about retweets is that only 1% of your audience, of the following that you are able to build, only 1% of those people will actually repurpose the content that you post on there and promote it through other channels, which is why it's very important for you to either follow them back or give them some kind of appreciation for retweeting what you put out there. Mostly the Twitter following that you will have will be inactive. They will be just consuming the content without giving you feedback. So for those people who actually take the time to give you the feedback, it is important to give them some kind of appreciation.
Absolutely. We've had a lot of people talk to us about the idea that they don't want someone taking their content and spreading it around. But that's really what you want in Twitter and social networking in general. You want that viral aspect of how your message can get across to people who you hadn't been targeting before. So it's not the same as someone taking all of your blog content and putting it up on their site. This is information you really want to share, and that's important for social networking and Twitter specifically. So we've looked at 3 examples of how businesses are using Twitter. Now we're going to go over a few general tips. Hopefully you're already thinking about what you can do with Twitter for your business, but here's a few guidelines that we recommend. First, make sure you focus on quality of your feed, not quantity. If you're going to put up 50 or 60 tweets a day, your potential audience is probably going to think that you're spammy or trying too hard. Instead, focus on putting up tweets that really share something with your audience, whether that be a special deal or information about an event that you have coming up. Make sure that you're going out of your way to engage your audience and not just putting up a lot of content to make it seem like you're trying.
And also keep in mind that there's no universal number for how many tweets a day or how many tweets a week you need to have, because your tweets will be a mixture of things. It will not be just you tweeting out for anybody who is willing to get your tweets. It will also be a bunch of ad replies. It will be some retweeting. And if you're in the similar business to Comcast, you'll probably have a lot of tweeting going on because you're basically providing customer service in the real time. So depending on your business, this rule may be slightly different.
Yeah, quality is going to be different for each kind of business that you have. In a customer service model, you want to make sure that you're being as engaged with your audience as possible. But if you're just sharing information, you can share it one at a time. We actually have some tools later on that we're going to talk about that help you schedule when your tweets can go up. Our next tip, and this is really important, there's no easy way to gain followers. There's no one-trick solution to have 20,000 followers all overnight. And if you did, you probably wouldn't want them. Don't try to ensnare people. Don't try to trick them into following you. If you post good tweets, people will be interested and you'll find your audience. It's really not hard to start building your Twitter numbers as long as you're putting up relevant information. But if you're really just trying to jump into conversations and tell everybody to come follow you, people will stay away.
With that said, though, you do want to provide people with a way to find you on Twitter. I've seen business cards that have a Twitter name on them. I've seen business signatures they have that have an @ symbol and your Twitter username. So you do want to give those people who are on Twitter an option to follow you if they want to. So they have to be able to find you. However, if you are too much wanting to get a following overnight, the quality of the following will suffer, and the results that you ultimately get from Twitter will suffer as well.
That's a good point, Maria, and it feeds into our third tip, which is to focus on the networking. This is a social networking system. You want to make sure that you're meeting and engaging people and finding new people, finding your potential audience. Build your relationships on Twitter and on the other networks that we're going to talk about later on in the webinar. Make sure that you're following people that you already know. Make sure you're sharing your Twitter information with people so you can all get connected before. Your contact list should be your follower list, and vice versa. All those people should know that you're on Twitter as well.
And it's another good point to make. When you do offline networking and you get all of those business cards, it may be worthwhile for you to go and see if some of those people are on Twitter and maybe start following them. I have done it multiple times when we go to conferences because a lot of the speakers out there, they are on Twitter, and if I like what they talk about, I do want to know what they talk about after the conference is over. So this is definitely something worthwhile. Taken offline, online. Many people are doing that.
You might be wondering at this point what you would possibly put on a Twitter feed. What do you have to tweet about? Oh, I don't want to Twitter about my sandwich. Okay, that's fine. We have some ideas for what you can share. Everything. Events, knowledge. Are you putting on a seminar in a little bit? Make sure that you put a link and some information in your Twitter feed so that all of your followers have the ability to come find out about it. Did you just read an article in a newspaper, on CNN, on one of the technology blogs, or even a blog in your industry, and you have an opinion on it? Share it, because that's going to start the conversation, and other people are going to reply back. And when they do, that's when you've got them. You start giving them relevant information, and they'll want to stay. They'll want to hear what else you have to say. And when you do start responding to people, respond genuinely. Don't just give someone a link to a blog post that you feel answers their question. Engage them in a conversation. Again, we keep coming back to the idea of social networking being just like normal networking, about building these one-on-one relationships. And it can be very easy to do, and it can be very time-consuming to do. But however you approach it, make sure that you're responding as genuinely as possible. So those are some tips on Twitter. Hopefully you've got some thoughts going around now and you're ready to jump into Twitter. But we're also going to talk about 2 other networks. And so to move on from here, Maria is going to talk about LinkedIn.
My guess would be that many of you are familiar with LinkedIn. It might be that you as individuals have accounts with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is slightly older than Twitter. It was founded in 2003, the same year that Facebook came about. And LinkedIn was started by a former Yahoo executive because he thought that professionals had no place online, no place to meet each other, no place to make business connections, pretty much no place at all. So it got started as a professional social network where people could not only post their resumes, but also look for work, look for partners, see what other people thought about something. Unlike other social networks, LinkedIn has been profitable from the get-go because it had the job hunting aspect to it, which some other networks didn't have. But what's also important about LinkedIn is that it is very narrow in terms of the audience that it offers. Unlike Twitter or Facebook, it is limited to people who are career-minded. It is limited to people with resumes. It's limited to entrepreneurs who see the power of it. So over the years, of course, since it got started in '03, it changed dramatically. From a simple job board, it became a real community. And we'll go over some things that you can do with LinkedIn, whether you have an account or you don't. What you see on the screen here is how a typical profile on LinkedIn looks. Lots of things, very highly populated, and seems a little complex probably if you're not on there. But let's see how businesses get LinkedIn. The example that you see on here is our pointed business profile. Business profiles on LinkedIn are still in beta, so they're limited compared to the individual profiles and what you can do. One of the highlights on this profile is our logotype. You do want to put yours on there. It is easy to do so. You get an option to put anything you want as a picture, but the fact that you have a logo on there makes it more credible, so I highly recommend doing that. Some other things to point out, you can connect your blog to your business profile. Very important, especially if you just started blogging and you need a little bit of bump in your traffic. It'll run under the news section just like ours does, and it is a great tool. Virtually takes 5 minutes to connect. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is specialties. Specialties are very similar to tags. If you're familiar to blogging, you know what I'm talking about. Specialties allow you to select the keywords that are associated with your business listing. And these are the keywords that people would use to find you. Of course, those who are aware of your brand name, they will type the brand name. But others that aren't, which in most cases would be the case on LinkedIn, they would just type in the industry or the service that you offer. Like you can see on here, we have online marketing, PPC, SEO, all the things that we do. So it's a good idea to have those in there. Moving from here, I'd like to talk about questions and answers, because questions and answers on LinkedIn is one of the applications that makes LinkedIn so valuable. Like I said before, the audience on LinkedIn is very limited to professional experts, so the questions and answers reflect that. While the service is very similar to what Yahoo has and what Google has, so the Yahoo's Answers and Questions, I think, was the first service of that kind, the answers and questions are very professional. You'll see professionals asking things about a new beta. You'll see people asking questions about how to do this and that. As a search marketer, I'm pretty active in this community, and I see a lot of questions that need the practical how to answer. Also, people ask for referrals. Multiple times I've seen people come on here saying, I need an agency that is located in Texas. Can you recommend anybody? Do you know anybody? I've seen people put up questions that talk about which way should I go? I have these two vendors and I'm having a hard time making up my mind. So it is a great community to be in. It is a great way to widen your network, and it is a great way to do business development if you are doing that for your business. So definitely worth looking into if you haven't participated yet. And if you do participate, LinkedIn actually allows you to become an expert. Just like Yahoo and Google, people get rated on the quality of the answer that they provide. So if you're able to provide a real solution to a person online, they will reward you by giving you a star, which means the best answer on LinkedIn. What we have on here is this week's top experts, and these are people who are experts in different kinds of topics. This is judged not only by the amount of answers that somebody has provided, but also by the quality of their answers. As you can see, all these people have lots of stars to them in different topics of expertise. So how do you earn expertise? It's simple. You just need to start answering. Moving on to how individuals get LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure that most of you have individual profiles on there, and if you don't, then it's probably a good idea to get one. A couple of things that you can do right away when you get the profile is, first, you can customize your public URL. By default, when you set up an account, the URL looks like a random number of characters. What LinkedIn allows you to do is they allow you to customize it. If you take a look at mine, I customized it to have my first initial and my last name, and it helps big time when somebody's typing my name in Google search results, because it does come up. What some people do is they do the business name, because like I said before, individual profiles have way more things that they can do than business profiles. I think LinkedIn will be able to give businesses more in the years to come. They are actively working on it. But right now, if you need a business presence, it is a good way to do it through individual profiles. Do customize your URL though, because otherwise you're missing out on the extra search engine benefits that you can get from LinkedIn. Another thing that I want to point out is the profile picture. When I put that on there, I got half of my network getting back to me saying, what kind of dog is it? This dog is so cute. Oh my God. What breed is that? And what that tells me is that people want to know what kind of person I am. They care that I have a dog. They want to know what breed it is. I think that if I put a passport picture on there, it probably would have created no buzz whatsoever from the network that I've got. So it is really important to keep that in mind. Coming back to the balance between the business and personal, a profile picture is a good place to think about that. Another thing I want to point out is the profile completeness. You do want to make sure that your profile is complete, because what the audience will see if your profile is incomplete, they'll see that you don't care enough, that you're not really there on the network because you didn't even take the steps to complete your profile.
You have a lot of information here, Maria, and there's a lot of information also on the business profiles. How long does it take to get these profiles to completeness?
You know, for the business profiles, because they're somewhat limited compared to the individual, it doesn't take long at all. I would guess that for people who are corporate, they may need to go through the approval process on the content that goes on there. But really, once you know what you want to put on there, it virtually takes about 10 minutes. LinkedIn is very straightforward in the setup process. For the individual profiles, it may take a little bit more depending on how advanced you want to go. My profile is pretty well developed because I'm active in the community. If you are not active in the community, it takes less time to set it up. So I'd say together, if you were setting up an individual and a business profile, you should be good in about 30 minutes. Another couple of things that I wanted to bring to your attention. As you see on here, I have a WordPress blog connected to my profile. It is very easy to connect your blog. LinkedIn has applications that allow you to do that, so it is important for you to take advantage of that. It is a great place for your business blog to go. It is a great place for your Twitter feed to go. It can be anything you want, just as long as you take that extra step and get it connected. And we'll talk about the applications shortly. Another thing that I wanted to point out before we leave that slide is the website section. Unlike some other social networks out there, LinkedIn provides some link juice and provides some search engine optimization benefits if you do it right. I've seen a lot of times that people put the websites in, but they use the incorrect text that goes with them. Oftentimes it says my company or my blog or my project, whereas really what you want to put on there is something that you want your search results to come up on. So what I have on here is Seattle Search Marketing, because that's what I want ultimately for Google to show when somebody types that in. So it is important, if you have an existing profile, to go in and make that change. If you know a little about SEO, then you probably know which keywords you want to go after. It is a good idea to put those keywords in. As you can see with my example, I also have a Twitter on here, because many people from my audience, they are on Twitter, and I'm giving them the opportunity to follow me if they're there. I have found it extremely helpful, especially when I just got started with Twitter. I remember the frustration I had when I only had like 3 followers a week after that, and it really helps it, because not only does it take care of the quality of your following, it also gives the initial boost that you need to continue doing it. Moving on, I would like to share the LinkedIn applications with you. As a LinkedIn user, I've been very happy when they integrated applications with the profiles. The applications are relatively new. I think they started in 2008, and since then they grew dramatically. They were starting with 2 applications, and now they have more than 30. And those applications allow you to do all kinds of things with your profile. Coming back to your question, Corey, about how difficult it is to set up, some of those applications are really easy. They take about 2 minutes to set up and be done with. One of the applications that I recommend for both businesses and individuals is the presentation. There's the Google presentation and the SlideShare presentation, whichever one you like more. They're virtually the same. What they allow you to do is they allow you to share your PowerPoint slides. So if you've done a presentation that you think is worthy of sharing with the audience, do put it on there. If you have a good presentation about your business, put it on there. If you're looking to get some feedback on a product, do put a presentation on there and ask your network to comment on it. It's a great tool for sure, and it's a great tool for BizDev as well. There are many other applications that you'll find useful, and I recommend that you just go and check them out. And if you can't find the one that you need, feel free to reach out to Corey and I, and we'll be happy to guide you in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Moving on from here, we'd like to give you some LinkedIn tips. Again, whether you're on there or not, these are the things that you want to make sure you do. Number one is customize your public profile. I've talked about this already, and I can't stress it enough. It is important to do so. If you don't do that, other people will. So do make sure that you own that URL and that it reflects on your name. Also take advantage of the 3 URLs in the profile. It is important because LinkedIn, unlike other social networks, it gives you the extra search engine optimization benefits that you don't want to miss out on. If you say my company and link to your company, it's going to do nothing. But if you do search marketing, for example, if you put search marketing on there, it's going to give you a very valuable high PR link to your company homepage. So it's definitely worth going after. Also, the rule of social is to give. Give and you shall receive. And by that I mean referrals, recommendations, answers. LinkedIn allows you to do all of that. If you give a referral to somebody in your network, chances are this referral will come back to you in no time. If you recommend somebody's work, they will recommend your work back. It is a great way, and Answers has been a great way to populate your pipeline and just to add a little bit more to your lead gen. With that said, do keep in mind that LinkedIn is not the only network out there, and the approach that you take, depending on which network it is, would be different. Do not miss out on the opportunity, though. If you're not there, you do want to have a presence. The next thing that we'd like to talk about is Facebook. And my last point on LinkedIn is you have to make sure that both Twitter and Facebook are integrated with your LinkedIn profile. If you are there, you want your audience to know that. So do take an extra step and make sure that whoever you're following on LinkedIn, whoever is in your network, that they know that you're always active on Twitter and that you have a Facebook fan page. They will appreciate it and they'll come and follow you. Moving on to the next network, the next one is Facebook. Quite particular. I think Facebook is the biggest network of all. So Corey would go over the history of Facebook with you, and we'll share some of the business examples.
Absolutely. Facebook is by far the largest social networking service that you're going to find, which gives it some interesting value and some interesting challenges. One of the first things to keep in mind is that because it's so big, it's going to be a little harder to find your target audience. It's interesting to think about where Facebook came from. It started in 2003, but it started primarily for college students. One particular college student, Mark Zuckerberg, is the man who created the service, and he created it while at Harvard University as a way to just keep in contact with his friends. Maria, is it true that Mark Zuckerberg got kicked out of Harvard because of Facebook?
He actually did. It was just for a short time because he breached Harvard's security. He basically hacked into their database to steal the pictures of his classmates and his teachers and to put them on there for the initial version of Facebook. But I think as soon as the school realized that the thing that he created had so much potential in it, he got back in, and I think they're really proud that he's a student.
Absolutely, yeah. And that focus initially on college students kept it as a very narrow base, but over the years they've expanded, they've opened up to really let everybody be a member. And there's a lot of broad opportunity in Facebook. You're going to find not just college students, but stay-at-home moms or entire groups of employees who stay connected through the different things that they can share on Facebook's platform. Obviously, what we're looking at here is the fan page for President Barack Obama, And it's actually a really great example of what a fan page can be. Fan pages are the business representations on Facebook. Instead of having a normal profile, you're going to create a fan page, and it's going to work very much like normal profiles, except it's going to be focused around your corporation, your business, the message that you want to share, instead of just random pictures or what you're doing today. So we're going to look at an example of a business that treats Facebook as a great community building platform, and that's Starbucks. This is Starbucks fan page. A couple of great things that are going on here. The first thing we'd like to point out is that they're using their logo in a really great way. Facebook has gone out of their way to make sure that you can integrate a lot of your branding into your fan page. Here the logo is nice and large. You obviously know that you're here at Starbucks and not at some fake Starbucks profile or possibly just a group of Starbucks fans, which there are a lot of groups there as well. And if you're smart, you'll take your fan page and recognize those groups. But this is Starbucks' actual presence. Another thing that we'll point out, and we've mentioned this on every different network, but it's the cross-pollination. Starbucks is using Facebook to let everybody know about their Twitter accounts. If you like what you see here on Facebook, follow them on Twitter. Maybe you'll probably get some different messaging, maybe a few different offers. Starbucks did a really great thing on Twitter recently where they announced that you could get a free latte. I think it was a couple months ago. And they changed the message a little bit between Facebook and Twitter because of the different audiences. Another great example here of what Starbucks is doing with Facebook, they're communicating with the people who are interested in Starbucks coffee, who go to Starbucks every single day, and there are lots of us out there. Their wall is dedicated to people who are leaving messages about their passion for Starbucks products. And it's not uncommon to see people communicating on this wall with one another. This goes back to the idea of community building. There's obviously a very large group of people who are interested in Starbucks. Why not foster the conversation that they're going to have?
And what it also allows Starbucks to do, by opening the comments and by focusing on the comments that the audience makes, they're able to build a great testing platform for their products to come. Because they have such a large following on Facebook, they are able to put the question out there if they're thinking of having a new coffee drink, or if they have a promotion going on, or if they want to highlight something that their business has been up to lately, whether it's a green initiative or anything like that. Because this community is used to participating, they will be very responsive. Very, very great example indeed. And you do want to make sure that whenever your business has a presence on Facebook, and I've seen this as a concern, especially with corporate big businesses, they want comments closed because they're afraid that people who will comment will come in and just ruin it for them.
Yeah, that's exactly what you want to avoid, especially in a place as large as Facebook. You want to get everybody to communicate on the content that you're posting so that you can respond back to them and get their feedback. Another great thing about having a fan page like this is that when Starbucks puts any content of their own on this page, the people who have become a fan of this page, they get that content in their normal Facebook profile feed. So it's easy access to the information that Starbucks wants to share. You don't necessarily have to come to the Facebook fan page for Starbucks and share your information. It's all very well integrated.
But how do you get a page that's good looking? Facebook, just like LinkedIn, has applications that you can use. And applications on Facebook started somewhere around 2008 as well. And some of these applications are owned and created by Facebook, while others are created by other businesses, just like on LinkedIn. What the applications allow you to do is a multitude of things. Some of the applications are personal. If you're a Facebook user, you've probably received and given gifts to people. Very popular indeed. It amazes me that people are willing to pay money for this little teeny picture that you give to other user. It's just mind-blowing. Some Facebook applications have a high likelihood of being used by a business. For example, you can share your slides, you can share your videos, you can give gifts that are particular to your business. For example, one of the ideas that I think Starbucks could benefit from would be to have gifts that are Starbucks drinks. Basically, to whoever is commenting or benefiting their page, they'd be able to reward them with a virtual coffee drink. Things like that you can absolutely do with applications. So we highly recommend that you take a look and take advantage of them.
You know, something I see a lot in the people who use Facebook is the way that they use the Facebook events almost as their calendar. Don't be afraid to give out information on any upcoming events that you're doing. Don't be afraid to share any pictures or videos on your feed as well, because it's all going to be part of the experience that the user's looking for.
And now we'd like to share a couple of Facebook tips with you. Of course, complete your profile. As businesses adjust to discovering Facebook, I've seen a lot of incomplete profiles lately. So you do want to go through the process all the way through the end. If you do that, then the users who land on your page, they won't leave because they'll see that you're there, you have established a presence, and if they comment, they'll hear something back. Because very much so on the social networks, it is important to get a response. You don't just send the message out there to outer space hoping that somebody will pick it up. You send it hoping that people will respond back to you. So it's very important to keep it complete. Share content. Corey is a big advocate for that. If you don't have content to share, you have no chance. Links, pictures, video, anything that you have, put it on there. The fan page allows you to do so. Use applications and make your own if you can. It is open for businesses to submit their applications. So if you have a good web dev on the team, maybe it's a good use of their time to make one. Allow comments and respond to them. We've brought this up before, especially as businesses are getting started. Oftentimes their concern is that if they allow comments, it will ruin the profile. Rather than ignoring negative comments or removing them, you want to respond to them because that is a turning point where the unhappy customer turns into a happy recurring customer. So you do want to take advantage of that. Lastly, we'd like to show some tools and resources that we find very helpful. And Corey mentioned a couple of those as he was talking about the Twitter slides. The first one, if you are just getting started, is called Name Checker. What it allows you to do is you can go on and check the name availability across most social networks out there. So if you're thinking of getting started with your business, use Name Checker to know if your name is available. And if it isn't, maybe you can check out the variations of the name just to make sure that you can get those. The second one that we have is called Backtype. You will know what is said about anything in real time if you use Backtype. Also, to learn which tags to add to your tweets, you can use hashtags. Corey's talked about hashtags a lot, and it is important that you use it. Hashtags is a great service. You can also schedule your tweets. If you go to Social Oomph, they have other services that they offer as well. And Corey, I'm sure you'd like to talk about Bitly.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of Bitly. You really can't go wrong using their analytical tracking and their URL shortening for all the different kind of social initiatives that you're going to have. Don't think that this is limited solely to Twitter just because Bitly is the big one on Twitter. You can use these for Facebook, for LinkedIn, YouTube. If anytime you want to share a link with someone, I would recommend using Bitly just simply because you can track so many other things from that link. And it's a free service right now, so don't hesitate to use it. I'd also I want to give a little bit of love to a service called WeFollow.com, which is essentially a Twitter directory. Just like in SEO, the idea of having website directories is valuable. It is here too in Twitter. It's very easy to add yourself in WeFollow. It's free to submit yourself to 3 different categories, and not only can you assist in having people find you, you can also find valuable people to follow back. Very, very great site. I definitely recommend spending some time and browsing through to see what everybody else is doing on Twitter as well.
One last point before we wrap up here is I often hear people who use social media for their personal use thinking that social media is free, or at least if it's not free, it's really cheap. What I want to make sure that we talk about is that while most of the tools are free to use, to integrate them and to build a comprehensive business presence on social media, it does take time and resources. If you're not willing to devote that, you will get little or nothing from the social. So it's important going into to know that while the tools are free, the integration and the time that it takes to build an online voice, to build a voice that people listen to, you have to be looking at it as any other marketing that you do. You have to measure it, you have to spend time with it, and you have to have the qualified resources that will do it for you ongoing. Because if you don't support what you've got on social, the people will leave because somebody else will be doing what you're doing and they will want to be there. So before you get started, keep that in mind. And we wouldn't be talking social media if we didn't have that slide on here. If you like our presentation and if you'd like to know what we're up to, take the time to follow Pointed. We are present on all 3 networks that we covered today, and we'll be sending out the slides, so don't worry about remembering that. And I think we're ready to go into the questions and answers.
Great. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Corey. And thank you, audience, for taking time out of your busy day to join us today. We do have some questions. First one is, how do I know when people are replying to me on Twitter?
That's really easy, actually. On the Twitter webpage, you'll see a link to mentions on the right-hand side, and when you click on that, Twitter's going to pull up any tweets where people have sent you an @reply. It's good to go in there every once in a while and double check and see what people are talking about. It's very great to respond. But you'll also, if you find the web interface kind of clunky, you might look into using a Twitter desktop application, something like TweetDeck, Twitterific, Twirl. They all have ridiculous sounding names, but they all really help you organize and maintain the content that you have to send out and receive on Twitter.
And if you have an iPhone, then by all means download an application for Twitter. It is very helpful, and it usually has a special tab that shows all the replies or name mentions that you've received, so it makes it really easy to use.
Okay. I had a question from Heather, and pardon me if I pronounce this wrong, but do you recommend Owly links or Bitly links?
You know, you could really go either way. I think part of my strong recommendation for Bitly is that it's pretty much the default standard on Twitter now. Whenever you put in a normal-sized link in a Twitter post on Twitter.com, it will use Bitly to shorten the link for you. Owly is a good service as well. I don't really see a huge difference between the 2 services. Part of the consideration is there have been URL shortening services in the past that didn't make your URL that short. I'm thinking of TinyURL, that kind of thing. And then there are services that are much shorter, like tr.im, which is simply trim. I like Bitly because it's ubiquitous. I like it because it has fantastic analytical tracking in real time for a lot of the links. And other services do as well, but Bitly seems to have the backing of Twitter corporate.
Okay. Chris asked, how can Toys R Us, because you were showing Toys R Us earlier as an example, how can Toys R Us have more following than followers?
Simply, the following is a count of how many people Toys R Us have friended themselves, how many people they are following tweets from. The followers are your actual audience. So what's really important in looking at those 2 numbers is, are you in a market where it's important for your followers to know that you're following them as well? If you're being very communicative with your audience, then it's good to follow them back as well, and that's how that number can get large. It's not uncommon, though, for a bigger brand name in their presence on Twitter to only be following 15, 20, 50 people, but have lots more followers. Twitter is a perfect example. Obviously, the guy running the Twitter account for Twitter isn't going out of his way to follow everybody who follows him back, because that's 2.4 million people.
Right. Okay. So next question is, how do I keep fake accounts from following me?
That is a really good question. However, if you build your following organically, if you don't strive to have 2,000 followers overnight, it's unlikely that it will be a real problem for you. Twitter is really working on taking care of spammers in a way that they don't have any presence on the network. Of course, there are still some spammy accounts around and some fake accounts, but really, if your following is organic to you, if they follow because they care, if you don't use the services that are popping up here and there to have 1,000 followers in a minute. If you don't go that route, it's unlikely that it'll come up, so I wouldn't really worry about it. Think about it as back in the day when search was starting, it was pretty popular to see an offer that said that you'll be #1 on Google for any term in 24 hours. As an SEO expert, I know that that's impossible, and same applies to Twitter. If all of a sudden you have 1 million followers overnight, chances are at least 500,000 of those are not real people.
Right. Okay. Well, speaking of millions, I guess the question, or billions, question is, do you think Twitter is here to stay, or is it a fad?
Twitter is here to stay. Twitter's not going anywhere. There's a lot of buzz around Twitter right now. You know, celebrities that get on there. The real Shaq, for example, is just Shaquille O'Neal saying the most ridiculous things in the world. And that gets a lot of exposure in mass media, but it's also an incredibly useful real-time communications tool. When there are world events happening, things that are going on in Iran with the elections, weather events, like there's an earthquake that happens in California or the wildfires that they just had, people will find out about that information on Twitter long before they do on a mass media site like CNN or BBC. So even in that regard, it's going to stick around for a while. There's a pretty passionate following. And that's exactly why now's a great time to jump in and start contributing to the community.
A couple more questions before we end the webinar. Norma had asked, where do you go on LinkedIn to put in a business profile page? I'm not sure if you can show that without...
I can try to address that in the short time that we have. On LinkedIn.com, when you're logged in as an individual, or if you're just on LinkedIn, there's a businesses tab that you can click. And what it does right now, just like on Facebook, it connects a business profile to an individual profile. So basically you have to go there and just follow the steps, and I think we actually might have a blog post about that, so if Norma, you don't mind leaving your email address, I'd be happy to follow up with the link.
Okay. We are running out of time, so I want to thank everybody for joining us today for our webinar. Just a reminder, if you missed part of this webinar, we'll be sending out a link shortly in a couple days with the webinar video and slide deck, so you can enjoy it at your leisure. Please contact us if you have ideas for future webinars also that you'd like to hear. Again, thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again during one of our monthly webinars. Goodbye.